Saturday 8 a.m. right through after third update 150 a.m. after the first weekend of August delivered two record openings over the last 3 years with Warner Brothers' Suicide Squad $133.7 million and Disney Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy $94.3 million. The majors decided against scheduling any full-bodied, four-quad franchise titles that could carry us into summer's last chapter. This left a hole on the calendar for Sony Media Rights Capital to deliver a risky adaptation of Stephen King's Byzantine novel The Dark Tower, which is looking at a low first-place take of $19.6 million. Warner Brothers' Dunkirk is $2.2 million behind, with a third-weekend second-place haul of $17.4 million, 35% for a 17-day total of $133.3 million. Sony Pictures, after a 10-year battle to crack the code of King's complex novel for the big screen with various director-writer teams J.J. Abrams, Damon Lindelof initially, then Ron Howard and Akiva Goldsman, with Universal and Warner Brothers making a go at it before Sony went 5050 with MRC on a $60 million budget. The question asked is, at what price? Adaptation Dark Tower is the third major studio long-labored misfire of the summer next to Universal's The Mummy and Warner Brothers' King Arthur Legend of the Sword. Despite being as fiscally conservative as possible, film financiers assert that even if Dark Tower makes $90 million worldwide, both Sony and MRC will lose an estimated combined 25% of their production cost, around $15 million, which is low next to other disasters this summer. Was the journey worth it? More on Dark Tower further down. Weinstein Co. In addition, there's two new labels launching their distribution ops, with Aviron Awakening, the former Relativity Halle Berry thriller Kidnap at $10.1 million in fifth, and Annapurna's Catherine Bigelow civil rights thriller Detroit with $7.3 million in eighth place. In addition, we have Weinstein Co. Voltage's Wind River, the directorial debut of Oscar nominee Taylor Sheridan, which is in play at 4 New York and Los Angeles venues with a fantastic estimated $38.7K per theater, or $155,000. Wind River premiered at Sundance, was then edited down by 6 minutes, with Elizabeth Olsen's character tweaked for the Cannes Film Festival. Sidebar: uncertain regard where it won Best Director for Sheridan. The film follows an out-of-town FBI agent who works with a local game tracker to hunt down a murderer after a Native American girl is found dead in Wyoming's Wind River Indian Reservation. Fox Searchlight also has their Doc Step, which is about the girls at the Baltimore Leadership School for Young Women, their step dance team, and life in the inner city of Baltimore. The film, by Broadway producer Amanda Lipitz, is also looking at a 3-day of $156,000 at 29 sites for a per theater of $5.3K. Annapurna on the bright side this weekend, as Hollywood has called for more diversity in film and TV, particularly post-Oscar so white. Here are 3 wide entries that star black actors in leading roles. While The Dark Tower is making a playing for King fans and genre moviegoers, there was concern among some trackers that Kidnap and Detroit might be vying for the same audience. Indeed, there is some significant overlap with both titles, majorities being females over 25. Detroit is pulling in 44% and Kidnap 42%, according to Comscore Screen Engine's post-track. Originally, Kidnap moved on to this date to grab the female 18-25 demo, with Detroit expected to lure upscale art house demos and African Americans. Currently, percent-wise, Detroit is pulling in the greater amount of African Americans at 40%, its leading demo to Kidnap's 25%, and Dark Tower's 23%. Aviron: while there will be plenty of noise this weekend about how Kidnap, a popcorn indie that was literally in a coma, outpegged the bigger-budgeted Detroit $35 million, $40 million production cost, the trick for the latter in the next month will be holding on to prime screens as awards season heats up. The exit polls for Detroit are through the roof, and its adult audience will take its time to get to the theater. Detroit has the highest cinema score of this weekend's wide entries, with an versus Kidnap's B and Dark Tower's B on post-track. Detroit I scored an overall 86% positive, with a strong 63% definite recommend versus Kidnap 74%, 53% in the same respective categories, and Dark Tower's awful 69%, 43%. African Americans love Detroit at 92% and Kidnap at 81%, while Caucasian audiences graded both titles respectively with 81% overall positive and a 66%. Once people get into Detroit, they love it. Perhaps we'll see some more momentum today. Financially, Kidnap is in a better position than Detroit, and definitely Dark Tower. Sources informed Deadline that Aviron acquired the film for a reported $3 million with a PA spend of $16 million, $18 million, $13 million to date, topping off at $15 million. Kidnap's B Cinema score is the same as Barry's 2013 crime thriller The Call, and that grossed a 3x multiple off at $17.1 million, opening for $51.9 million. Barry's 2007 suspense title Perfect Stranger settled with AC did a 2x multiple, going from $11.2 million opening to a $23.9 million final. Kidnap is off to a great start, and its economics indicate it will be in the black after all ancillaries. The pick should reach a 2x multiple stateside. Detroit sought to grab a commercial audience, that's why it went wide. Given its critical acclaim, Detroit should have been platformed to fuel further buzz, or better yet, should have launched with the Falls Triad of film festivals Telluride, Venice, TIFF. Either would have assisted in propelling the title past any hesitation that some moviegoers might have toward the controversial subject matter. Whenever a smart movie like this, which should be platformed, goes wide, it's typically because the pick's budget needs to be recouped quickly. Duly note, low budget hurt the awards chance for Bigelow's Hurt Locker $17 million final domestic, which was a late June release 8 years ago that ultimately scored 6 Oscar wins, Best Film and Director out of 9 nominations. Rex Shuttershock, there's a saying that's heard in the improv classes at the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater: if it feels easy, that's because it is. That same adage could be applied to studios when they try to adapt source material to either the screen or TV. How if it's not so easy to adapt a piece of material, then either shelve it, or perhaps it's better suited for TV or online. When more than one studio continually returns to the drawing board over the course of the decade, trying to stuff a piece of complex literature like Dark Tower into 90,120-minute structure, maybe it's time to move on. When more than one studio continually returns to the drawing board over the course of the decade, trying to stuff a piece of complex literature like Dark Tower into 90,120-minute structure, maybe it's time to move on. Dark Tower, unlike Harry Potter, apparently is not easy to adapt one book at a time to screen, so Sony Merc's version pulled bits from all 8 novels in the series. Lindelof even said in a 2009 USA Today interview that he loved the Dark Tower books and King so much, he was terrified of screwing it up, and after Lost couldn't devote another 7 years to a property of that magnitude. Dark Tower is the third huge rock to be rolled uphill this summer, along with King Arthur and The Mummy by the majors, only to watch them all come rolling down at the BO. Quite often when a production problem arises on these films, there's a rush to solve them by committee natch, and I hear that director Nikolai Arcel in his Hollywood directorial debut here following the foreign film nomination for his film A Royal Affair received a heavy dose of notes from both Sony and MRC executives, not to mention there's a heavy guard of producers here in Ron Howard, Brian Grazer, Akiva Goldsman, who wrote various drafts, and of course there's King, who has been very supportive of the film, rallying fans online to see it on Twitter and bringing NY press and fans to see it in Bangor, Maine. The Dark Tower today. Everywhere. Mid do y'all find Stephen King at Stephen King August 4, 2017. One East Coast producer-director, who is also a die-hard Dark Tower fan, criticized they crammed too much into the trailer, as well as too much in the film, while oddly leaving key characters out. Also, the studio and the filmmakers are trying to appeal to people who know nothing about the book rather than the hardcore fans who will see it, and spread the gospel of how amazing this series is. Amconey TV. Given the slew of cracks taken at the Dark Tower script, it brings to mind another property, the Vertigo comic book Preacher, which went through a lengthy development hell and at various points had such directors as Kevin Smith and Sam Mendes attached. The property was bought by Columbia Pictures in 2008 after HBO bailed on making a series. Ultimately, on the Culver City lot, it was soon realized that the zaniness of Preacher would be properly contained in an episodic structure versus film, with Seth Rogen, Evan Goldberg and Sam Catlin bringing the comic to realization for Sony TV and AMC. Originally, Dark Tower was intended by Goldsman's Weed Road and Howard Grazer's Imagine Entertainment to be 3 films with a TV series bridging the first 2 titles. That became too ambitious, and both Uni and Warner Brothers put the project into turnaround after realizing that the budget was too unwieldy. That's when Sony Merc stepped in. If there's one thing Sony and MRC can be commended for, it's realizing that when it comes to mounting audacious and risky projects, to do them at a low cost, never at Valerian $180 million levels. While the chances for a Dark Tower sequel are slim, Sony Merc will make sure that fans aren't left unsatisfied. There's a TV series already in the works with former Walking Dead showrunner Glenn Mazzara. While the series will be separate from the film and focus on a younger gunslinger, The Dark Tower show is set to feature appearances by the Pick stars Elba, Dennis Haysbert and Tom Taylor. The series is also based on the fourth novel, The Wizard and Glass. On the flip side, sometimes there's a payoff whenever a major studio painstakingly develops a project over several years. Warner Brothers' Wonder Woman went through various starts and stops in film and TV before it finally came to light as a feature beloved by females who made the DC female superhero pick the highest grossing film of the summer, and second best of the year with close to $400 million. No regrets there. The top 10 based on Saturday AM industry estimates for the weekend of August 46. 1. The Dark Tower SONYMRC, 3,451 theaters, $7.7 million. Fry includes $1.8 million previews, 3-day cum $19.6 million. Week 1. 2. Dunkirk WB, 4,014 theaters, $266 $5 million. Fry 37%, 3-day cum $17.4 million, 36%, total $133.30. MWK33. The Emoji Movie Sony, 4,075 theaters, $3.8 million. Fry 62%, 3-day cum $12.6 million, 49%, total $49.70. MWK24. Girls Trip Uni, 2,582 theaters, 66, $3.6 million. Fry 41%, 3-day cum $11.5 million, 41%, total $85.50. MWK35. Kidnap AVR, 2,378 theaters, $3.7 million. Fry includes $500,000 previews, 3-day cum $10.1 million. Week 1. 6. Spider-Man Homecoming SONYMARVEL, 3,116 theaters, $592.6 million. Fry 3-day cum $8.9 million, 38%, total $295. MWK57. Atomic Blonde FOC, 3,326 theaters, $22.4 million. Fry 66%, 3-day cum $8 million, 56%, total $33.90. MWK28. Detroit ANPA, 3,007 theaters, 2,987, $2.6 million. Fry 3-day cum $7.3 million, 1,986%, total $7.70. MWK29. War for the Planet of the Apes Fox, 2,704 theaters, $671.7 million. Fry 43%, 3-day cum $5.9 million, 43%, total $130.10. MWK410. Despicable Me 3 UNIILL, 2,445 theaters, $585, $1.7 million. Fry 30%, 3-day cum $5.5 million, 28%, total $241 million. Week 6 Paramount Notable Step FSL, 29 theaters, $52,000. Fry. PTA $5, 3K 3-day cum $156,000. Week 1 Wind River TWC, 4 theaters, $52,000. Fry. PTA $38, 7K 3-day cum $155,000. Week 1 An Inconvenient Sequel Truth to Power Par, 180 theaters, $176, $339,000. Fry 455%, 3-day cum $939,000, 651%, total $1.10. MWK2 Friday, second update 1:38 p.m. There goes exhibitors' share prices. We knew this month would be bad at the box office, but this is like last weekend off August low. You mean to tell us there weren't any major studio tentpoles available here to start the month? It's not like there was a DC or Marvel or Mission Impossible title slotted, scaring everyone away. The Dark Tower, despite being pummeled by critics, is currently looking to lead the box office for the weekend off of noon estimates, with an opening day between $6 million, $7 million, and a 3-day between $17 million, $19 million. Not a very good start for this mid-budget sized movie. The last time a major studio film placed number 1 with a 3-day in the teen range for the first full-bodied weekend of August was 1992 with Warner Brothers' Unforgiven, $15 million. Different time and marketplace altogether. WB Warner Brothers Dunkirk is currently at $4 million, $5 million today, with a weekend 3 of $14.5 million to $16.5 million. This film still has its IMAX auditoriums in its control, and again, no surprise here if it overtakes Dark Tower depending on the audience reaction to Dark Tower. On the high end, Dunkirk's grasp will be $132.45 million. Sony's The Emoji Movie is at $4 million today for a $10 million second weekend, 59% and running cum of on the high end of $47 million, but Universal's Girls Trip should beat it with $11 million in weekend 3. By Sunday, Girls Trip will count $85 million. It is easily the highest-grossing comedy of the summer, stateside in Malcolm D. Lee's career. Detroit. From Oscar-winning director Kathryn Bigelow is looking at around $3 million today for a wide debut that's within an estimated $7 million, $10 million. Aviron Pictures' Kidnap, according to industry estimates, is at $3.3 million today for a $9 million, $10 million opening. Focus Feature Sierra Affinity's Atomic Blonde is eyeing $2.5 million in its second Friday for a second 3-day that's between $7.5 million, $9.5 million, 53% for a 10-day of $35.3 million. 20th Century Fox War for the Planet of the Apes is at $1.5 million in its fourth Friday, and $5.2 million over 51% with a running total of $129.4 million. Friday, first update 7:09 a.m. Sony Media Rights Capital's feature adaptation of Stephen King's The Dark Tower grossed $1.8 million last night at 2,770 theaters off showtimes starting at 7:19 p.m. Why that weird time? It's keeping with the 1919 lore from the book. Tracking initially showed The Dark Tower opening at number 1 in the low $20 million range, but the film, which is not a faithful adaptation of the book, not to mention a patchwork of genres, has been blasted by critics with a 20% Rotten Tomatoes score. Sony, much like with Emoji Movie last week, held the review embargo date until the latest possible time on this film. Reviews could easily sink Dark Tower into the high teens over 3 days, giving Christopher Nolan's Dunkirk a third weekend number 1 when in the vicinity of $16 million. To date, the World War II British movie has amassed $116 million through 2 weeks. The Dark Tower was financed $5,050 by MRC and Sony at a reported $60 million. Sony is hoping that King fans and African American and Hispanic audiences will take this title to a higher level at the BO. Dark Tower follows the last gunslinger, Roland Discain Idris Elba, who is locked in an eternal battle with the Man in Black Matthew McConaughey and determined to prevent him from toppling the Dark Tower, which holds the universe together. In the King series, there are also Easter eggs and homages to the author's previous classics such as The Shining, Pet Sematary and more. While Dark Tower was rallying as a top ticket seller earlier in the week, its sales slowed the minute reviews hit the woe studios face in this Rotten Tomatoes era. Last night's money for the film, directed by Nikolai Arcel, was notable, higher than Focus Features' Atomic Blonde, $1.52 million last Thursday, which posted a $7.1 million Friday and $18.3 million opening, and on par with Ghost in the Shell, $7.7 million Friday, $18.7 million weekend. The Dark Tower sets off a fall season that's a King renaissance across film and TV due to the hot embrace of low-budget genre at the BEO, plus the fact that the current generation of filmmakers and TV creators grew up on King's novels. On September 8, New Line Warner Brothers has a feature adaptation of his classic horror novelette, while Act Networks has the series Mr. Mercedes premiering on August 9. Aviron. Dark Tower competes against 2 other wide releases this weekend by labels which are entering the film distribution game. Annapurna's Detroit, which expands to 3,007 theaters with an eye on $13 million, and Aviron's release of Halle Berry thriller Kidnap at 2,378 venues, tracking at $8 million. Kidnap was shot 3 years ago and was acquired by Relativity out of TIFF. Kidnap wound up being a casualty of Relativity's financial woes, but the Pix producers sought to ensure life for the film, which tested highly among African American audiences, and shopped it around. David Dinerstein's new film label Aviron saved the movie, believing that it was a great title to start Aviron. Detroit took in $525,000 in previews last night, while Kidnap posted $500,000 at 1,900 locations. Annapurna. Kidnap will unfortunately be impacted by a 39% Rotten Tomatoes score, while Detroit's wide expansion from 20 screens in 10 cities off a certified fresh 89% RT score is the one to watch. Detroit goes wide at a time in August when adults start to embrace early awards season titles. The pick, budgeted at a reported $35 million, follows the events that went down at the Algiers Hotel on July 25, 1967, when the Detroit police murdered 3 black civilians and tortured 7 other black men and 2 white women, after a gunshot rang out from the address. The Kathryn Bigelow-directed Mark Boal scripted movie is gripping, a potboiler that truly speaks to our times post-Ferguson. The Los Angeles premiere last night at the DGL left 600-plus attendees breathless, and you could see that in their faces as they exited the theater last night. John Boyega, Anthony Mackie, Will Poulter, Ben O'Toole and John Krasinski star. While both Kidnap and Detroit will vie for African-American audiences, the latter has the potential to cross over in its play toward the specialty cinema older adult crowd. Not to mention, it will be interesting to watch word-of-mouth kick in, as Detroit is that mesmerizing. As far as holdovers go this weekend, it's expected that Sony's The Emoji Movie will decline at least 55% in its second weekend for $11 million, raising its cume by Sunday to $48 million, while Focus Feature Sierra Affinity's Atomic Blonde is expected to decline 55% for $8 million, $9 million for a running 10-day total that could reach $35 million.